about. When you look at places like Fells Point, you look at Canton, you look at Federal Hill, you look at Little Italy, most of the businesses in those communities are owned and run by the people who live in those communities. When you go to places like East Baltimore, West Baltimore, and the predominantly black and poor white communities, what you have is almost 90% of the businesses in those communities are owned and run by people who don't live in those communities. So what you end up with is a lack of financial infrastructure within those communities. And the word community itself, it means ownership. It means being a part of the community. And this is one of the things that is lacking in the poor white and poor black communities. Hence is why, in part, that there's also a crime problem. See, when you have no ownership, you have no value. When you have no value, you have no self-worth. If you have no self-worth, you care about nothing or anybody else. So when we hear the mayor in Baltimore City talk about jobs, it's not jobs that are needed. We need to recreate ownership of the people who live in those communities. Because when you have one bad segment in a society, it will eventually, and I think the incident that happened during the Freddie Gray era, when we saw down in Camden Yards, what happened at Camden Yards, where people, and I believe, I don't ever recall, if anybody can correct me, but I don't ever recall a stadium at a major league nationally televised baseball game where people had to be held in a stadium because there was anarchy going on outside of the stadium. And the question that we have to ask is, it goes beyond the crime part. Why are these people acting like this? Where did we go wrong? Well, we went wrong in a lot of different places. You know, we went wrong with the school system. We have a school system now that's spending, that's unaccounted for in Baltimore City, almost $130 million a year. We have a shortfall that no one seems to be able to account for. The only thing that's guaranteed, it seems to be, in Baltimore City public school system is the fact that you have a revolving door of superintendents who make almost $250,000 a year, and that in that revolving door of superintendents, right, there's another door that's exiting in the back where they get a golden parachute of almost $250,000 a year. Something is inherently wrong there, that we're paying that kind of money to superintendents, and we got a series of failing schools within Baltimore City's public school system. So, you know, my profession, I work in law enforcement. I live in Baltimore City. I work in the communities in Baltimore City. I'm not here to speak today on behalf of the agency that I work for, because that's not why I'm here. I'm here as a concerned citizen about my community. And a lot of us are afraid. When I pulled up on my motorcycle just now, the young lady out here, I won't say her name or anything like that, but when she got out and she realized that I was coming in here to speak, she says, "Oh, I was afraid of you, that it might be a problem." And here I am, I'm a law enforcement officer. I don't say that to pick on her. I say that for this reason. This is the state of mind that people are in today. People are afraid to even speak to each other. And that's just a shame. And we have lost our way when it comes to civility. You know, we've lost our way. So when, you know, getting back to the community, you know, and the law enforcement problem in the community, the crime problem in the community, you know, there's a serious, how can I put this? There's a sense of entitlement with the general public now and law enforcement. The public has this notion, at least some segments of it. They have this notion that, you know, I have a right to tell you if you can arrest me, if you can't arrest me, what's legal, what's not legal. What has been lost in that transition is The law enforcement officer, it's his job to enforce the law. It's your job to comply when he's doing that. It's the judicial job to decide whether what that officer did was just or unjust. And we've lost that. But I want to hit to the heart of some other things about the community where we have gone wrong. You know, when you look at the last 50 years in Baltimore City has been run basically by one entity, you know, when it comes to city government. And it doesn't matter who the mayor has been during that period of time. It's a system it's one segment of government that's been running that system. And I'm going to give you an example of something. You take this woman over here, we'll call her woman A, and then we got woman B. Woman A, she has a little piece of job. She's getting by. She has a couple of kids. And her thing is, she needs just a little bit of help. She doesn't want Section 8. She doesn't want WIC. She doesn't want food stamps, right? She doesn't want a check every month. The only thing she needs is a little help with child care. The system tells her no. And the reason they tell her no is because they say she makes too much money. Now let's go over here to young lady B. Young lady B doesn't work. She gets WIC, she gets Section 8, she gets a check, right? She gets vouchers, she gets the whole 9 yards. And here's the crazy part about that. A paid taxes, B doesn't. Something is inherently wrong with the way we've been doing things. Something is inherently wrong there. Where we got a person who pays taxes, one who pays no taxes, right? So what she's left with over here is she cannot sustain. So because she cannot sustain, she ends up doing what? Getting pulled back over to B. We've been doing this for a long time, and it's not working. We need to try something new. You know, the family structure has been totally broken down. We need to have something in place where we can have these men come back home to their families and give these people their check. We can talk about the check issues later, but we need to reestablish family structure within the community because it's lost. And all you have to do is look at all the young men out here that are just running rampant. There's no values. Nobody knows how to hold the door for a lady anymore, anything like that. And it's terrible. And we have to get back to family values. The other thing I want to touch on real quick is the community relations and law enforcement. You know, I had a situation one day. I'm on Quantico and Park Heights Avenue. I don't know if any of you know where that is, but it's the hood of all hoods. I'm out there at like 12:30 in the morning. It's the middle of July, a weekday. It was 90 plus degrees outside that particular day. I had an officer that was working with me, and I pull up, and let me just give you a little description of Quantico and Park Heights Avenue. It looks like what you would think Beirut looks like when it got bombed. You got houses, partial houses, then you got a whole house, then you got a house next door with no roof, you got one next door with no porch, you got one next door with no sidewall, you have no street lights whatsoever. So here, me and this officer together, and I say, come on, let's get out the car and take a walk. And he looks at me and says, take a walk? You lost your mind. I'm not walking up in there and I can't see up in there and all those people are up in there. And it was a bunch of people up in there. So we walk, and as we're walking, I'm speaking to people. How you doing, Mom? Hey, how y'all doing? And you can hear people mumbling, what they doing out here this time of morning, walking up here, you know? So my partner says out loud, kids are running by us. My partner says out loud, he says, man, I see why all these kids getting killed in Baltimore City out here this time of night, right? And all of a sudden, if you remember the E.F. Hutton commercials, when E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody listens. All of a sudden, it got quiet when he made that statement. So then I turn to the people and I say, I need everybody to look across the street real quick and look and see as far as your eyes can see the houses. I see two things that stand out. Can anybody tell me what I just saw? And I can see a total of maybe about 60 houses. So people start saying things like, oh, one doesn't have a roof, one doesn't have a porch, and this and that. I said, no. If you look, you'll notice out of all of these houses, out of 60 houses, you see 2 air conditioning units. I said, you see grandma right here sitting with Day at these steps? And, you know, they acknowledge, yeah. And then I said, well, see, grandma is out here with Day because guess what? If you know anything about row houses in Baltimore City, they're like the ocean. They're real cool in the morning, and they're unbearable in the evening. That tile has been so hot for so long that they're unbearable to sleep in. So see, grandma got Day out here because guess what? Day-Day's got an asthma condition, and she has to make up her mind, am I going to let Day-Day come out and get some air at 1 o'clock in the morning, or am I going to end up going to Sinai Hospital because Day-Day done had an asthma attack in the house? Well, guess what? Uncle Johnny across the street, over there playing cards and dominoes, he's got a respiratory condition, right? You see these kids, these teenagers up beside this boarded up house? They're up beside the boarded up house not because they're selling drugs. They're up beside the boarded up house because guess what? They can't sleep inside either. And guess what? They don't want to be in little Day in the way. They don't want to hear what grandma and them got to say, and they definitely don't want to hear Uncle Johnny and them war stories. So what I'm describing to you is a night in Baltimore City where things are not always what they exactly look like. The biggest problem with law enforcement sometimes in the community itself is the fact that people don't understand what they're looking at. And I told the officer, I said, you see these steps right here? I said, where do you live at? He said, I live in Howard County. I said, where are your kids right now? He said, my kids are in bed asleep where they're supposed to be. I said, you see these steps right here? He said, yeah. I said, well, see, these steps, this is a Baltimore City version of a Howard County air conditioning unit, right? So I asked him, I said, do you drink beer and have parties on your deck? You have a deck? And he says, yes. I said, well, you see these steps right here? I said, well, see, these steps are a Baltimore City version of a Howard County deck. In other words, what I'm saying to you is we have a lot of miscommunication, although we speak English. There are some serious language barriers. There's some serious cultural barriers, you know, as far as how people live, why they do what they do. You know, and we have to do all of us as a community, we have to do a better job of understanding each other. Because if at the end of the day, you know, we all suffer eventually. But what we need to get back to, we need to figure out, we have a dilapidated housing situation in Baltimore City. I have a friend on Emerson Avenue, Emerson and Bryce. He's been trying to sell his barbershop for the last 3 years. And the banks have told him, for example, right, they will not lend money to a buyer, even if they have good credit. And the reason they won't do it is because of the value of the property in that area. Now, I know for a fact, because I live and work in some of these areas, right, that most of these vacants, people are living in them. We have people actually living in these vacant, deplorable houses. You can't tell me that there's something that we can't do to facilitate these vacant houses. This is how bad it is. And if anybody in here who may have been raised in Baltimore City, you can relate to what I'm about to say. When I was a kid, there were vacant properties in Baltimore City when I was a kid. I am a 59-year-old grown man now. And guess what? Some of those same properties from when I was a kid are still sitting there vacant. Something is wrong. You know, I want to thank Mr. Collier for inviting me to come in and speak and give just a piece of my mind. I think a lot of things that are going on, you know, when it comes to the racism that's being talked about a lot of it actually is not racism. We're not talking about the real racism. To me, Donald Trump is not the racism. The racism is just what I just described about the housing, about the way the businesses are set up in different parts of Baltimore City. And like I said, something is inherently wrong when you have one segment of a city that 90% of the businesses in that segment of the city are run by people who don't have any affiliation with that city, that community at all. But then when you look at other communities within the city, it's not the same business model. That to me is a racism issue that I think that we can all fix, right? To make it better for pretty much all of us. Does anybody have any questions or anything? I would like to thank you guys for allowing me to share with you.
So you do video work. I saw a video of yours online, and that's how I became in contact with you. So talk a little bit about your video work and what you're trying to do with that. And Dundalk TV wants to come out and support that as well.
Well, one of the things that I find troubling is, you know, we spend too much time. Let me just put it like this. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. Because that depends on what we're talking about. You know, I don't need a party affiliation to tell me what's right and what's wrong. We have a lot of things there's a lot of stuff that's going on out here, and people are pro to whatever they're dedicated to, as opposed to being pro to their fellow human beings. You know, and most of my videos, I really try to express what's right and what's wrong. You know, following the law. You know, I think we're all obligated to doing that. You know,
you're giving a real snapshot of what's going on and what you're seeing in the street daily.
Yes.
And I found that to be very important. I was drawn to it. It was very powerful.
Yes, and you know, it's so important. We invest a lot of money, and right now that's going on with the consent decrees and all this other stuff, and they're bringing people in to do studies, and they're spending thousands of dollars, which basically we're paying for. When at the end of the day, what we have to do as law enforcement officers, we have to get out the car. We have to get out the car. We have to talk to people in the community. We have to, when we ride by the corner, you know, don't ride by, get out. Get up, go up and talk to those young people on the corner, right? When you treat people suspect, right, they're going to treat you like you're the enemy. You know, we're supposed to be gatekeepers, not overseers. And I think once they get that figured out, you know, you'll have a better cohesion of dealing with people in the community. I love going to work every day. My area is Pratt and Payson Street, Hollins and Payson. I'm in the heart of where all the confusion is going on. I live in the same, my district is where those two women a couple of weeks ago were killed, the mother and the daughter. My district is also where that lady was killed sitting on the porch. That's my area I work in. And I knew that lady. I love the people in my community, young and old. They tell me to be careful. They come up to me, the young people, you know, ask me how I'm doing. And that's the way it should be. Baltimore is my Mayberry, not my Iraq. You know, and you can, when you treat the community like it's you're walking the occupying force, the people in the community, they're going to treat you like you're the enemy. And I think that is so important in policing. We have to understand that. You know, you just can't go in there like you're on a safari hunt. And I'm not saying that every officer that works does that. And while we're talking about officers, I will say this also. There's always going to be police brutality. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I can't think of an occupational specialty where there's a human factor, where there's a perfect set of people. That's unfortunate, but that's true. You know, we get up and we fall down just like anybody else. The one thing that I always ask myself, right? Can this man have the same respect for me out of a uniform, right, that he has for me in a uniform?